All right, DJ LeRoy, what's going on?
Night Watchman. So here's the quick question. So January 6th, we certainly do know what has happened, right? What
Yeah,
happened there, right?
yeah, it was insurrection.
But did you see that congressman out of Georgia? Like, what Kool-Aid is he
Yeah.
drinking? Is it the orange kind?
Some of them don't exist in the same universe that we do. They're in their minds, they're somewhere else. A
and
reality distortion.
absolutely, and I guess that's why voting is so very important.
Right, right.
You know,
So we
so
want
to,
to turn the energy up on
okay.
the primary that's upcoming June 22nd here in New York City. Going to be one of the most important primary votes in a long time. As we know in New York, usually the people who win the primaries, the Democratic primary, are
Hmm.
generally the candidates that are likely to win in the general election. And so we have new mayor coming up here in Manhattan. We have new district attorney, new borough president,
Hmm.
a lot of city council changes. And this year, there is a new system called ranked choice voting.
Wow.
And
So Night Watchman, I've heard it, but I don't understand it. Do we have some folks that can actually
we
explain it?
better, because if it's between you and I, we're in trouble.
I got you. So you know what, Night Watchman, bring him out. Let's see. Let's find
All
out.
right. So we have Nicole Yearwood, who is from Rank the Choice or Rank the Vote NYC. So she is an
Nice.
acknowledged expert in this. Hello, Nikki. How are you
Hey,
this
Hello,
evening?
Nikki.
hello. Good evening. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for having me. Hi, Curtis. Good
Hi.
seeing you.
You
I
too.
want to
You
call
too.
you DJ Yearwood. I like it.
Absolutely.
Right.
Beautiful.
Music.
Mm,
And
mm.
so, who else do we have in the green room?
Well, I understand, Night Watchman. Bottom line, if this man had not existed, you know what? This screen would be blank.
That's
It would
right.
disappear.
That's
So,
right.
so we definitely have to say the founding person of WHCR 90.3 FM, the one, the only, Vincent Thomas.
The
Vincent.
original voice of Harlem, Vincent. How are you?
Hello. How's it?
There
How
you
are
go.
you this evening?
Good, good.
Great.
Good seeing you, man. And so we understand that we're actually catching you out there on the West Coast. But hey, we're all Harlem here tonight.
Actually,
Good.
actually, you can see the sunrise in the back as the sun comes up here. Finally,
Absolutely. So, Night Watchman, you want to kick it off? Go ahead, buddy.
Okay, so Nikki, can you just give us a basic explanation of what ranked choice voting is?
Sure. So, ranked choice voting is basically in New York City. We will be able to rank up to 5 candidates for the offices of mayor, public advocate, comptroller, borough president, and city council person. You don't have to rank 5. You can still go in and rank 1. Our ballot will look a little different. We will have 5 columns. Your first candidate is your favorite candidate, and your fifth candidate is your least favorite. So you rank in order of preference from least favorite to most favorite.
Hmm.
Excuse
Gotcha.
me, from most favorite being your first to your least favorite being your fifth.
Hmm.
First is your favorite. So you'll have columns, first choice, second choice, third choice, fourth choice, and fifth choice. And you'll have ovals that correspond to each candidate. And you will shade in the oval in the row next to your candidate of choice.
Hmm.
Mm,
So
okay.
that's the basic explanation.
Okay.
And
Uh,
what brought it about? What is the problem that was looking to be solved by coming up with ranked choice voting?
So the it came about because I don't know if you guys may remember this, but in 2009 we had a one-off election for public advocate and comptroller. And a runoff election basically occurs when a citywide candidate did not receive at least 40% of the vote. So we had the runoff election. A runoff election is basically running the entire election over again.
mm,
It cost roughly $13 million to do. And basically, the turnout was next to nothing. It was extremely low turnout. So that's when the conversation began about ranked choice voting, which is sometimes called instant runoff voting as well, right? So you're getting you're picking your first choice, and then you can automatically pick your backup candidates in the event that the first choice doesn't receive, a certain amount of votes or able to stay in the race. And so that is basically what prompted the discussion. The New York City, so fast forward a few things. So Councilmember Gail Brewer introduced a bill in 2010 in the New York City Council. In 2010 and in 2018, the Charter Revision Commissions for New York City discussed ranked choice voting and did not make a decision. In 2019, after hearings and many discussions, the New York City Charter Revision Commission voted 14-1 to place ranked choice voting on the ballot for referendum. So it was actually a ballot referendum. It was ballot question one on the general election ballot in November of 2019. New York City voters 73.5% voted yes to ranked choice voting, and it was scheduled to be enacted in 2021. So we basically voted for this in 2019.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
And Vincent, now obviously not existing here in New York City, but other places out west, it does already exist. Do tell, explain.
Well, I'm going to talk mostly about the Bay Area, but I want to mention that the state of Maine has ranked choice voting. There are a
Mm,
few municipalities in the state of Minnesota that have ranked choice voting, and Alaska is going to expand it next upcoming election.
Mhm.
Having said that, since 2004, the Bay Area has had ranked choice voting. That's the county slash city of San Francisco. That's Alameda County, and it's Alameda County does not have it, but the other three cities in the Bay Area do. That's Berkeley, Oakland, and the most people on the east don't know, San Leandro, which is about 5 miles south of Oakland. They've been doing it, as I said, so there's 10 years of experience. So one of the activities I participated in is to put together a series of webinars that got the stakeholders. By stakeholders, I mean the potential of political advisory groups, the potential independent expenditure committees, county committees, and election law attorneys for a series of webinars sponsored by the York law firm that has offices both in San Francisco and New York. And it's been a very interesting experience in terms of being able to deal with some myths and misconceptions, and also the fact that there is actually strategy involved with making ranked choice voting work. If you are, if you're trying to get a candidate elected, if you are not coordinating with the candidate direct, but you have an independent expenditure, what a strategy might be. The other issue that we had in our exchanges is the litigious nature of New York election politics. That's in the state and the city. That cycle, election lawyers are in and out of court before judges at a level that does not exist in any of the other states in the union. What that means is that you have built-in delays that we can get into later might be blamed more to do with the way we function in New York during the change. And as we get more into our conversation, I can kind of contrast, the outreach piece that Nikki is involved in, and the idea of trying to get people who actually are participants in the election cycle as candidates, as political strategic committees, and as county committees, and also a few other peripheral things that they have to operate differently if they're going to make effective use of their campaigns and getting people. So that's something that we've dealt with going along.
I just want to add also two facts about it, right? Because I gave the basics that people will be able to rank through first through fifth choices, most favorite to least favorite. But in addition to that, now runoff elections are eliminated. So we will not have a runoff election if a citywide candidate does not reach a certain threshold. But in addition to that, now, and that's part of the strategy, that 50 you have to receive now 50% more than 50% of the vote in order to be declared the winner. So it's not a situation where it's whoever gets the most votes wins. It's you have to now receive more than 50% of the vote or a majority to be considered the winner in our local elections now.
So, how many candidates do we have running this year for mayor?
Oh, wow. 13,
Yeah.
13?
We have
Right.
about 8. We have 8, I believe,
Yeah.
Okay.
and
So,
slots for
so
the
there's a
voter
like,
to choose from.
so there's a likelihood that this year, the leading candidate will not have 50%. So, can you run us through a
Almost certain.
scenario? Yeah, a scenario of what happens, and let's not put any names to it, but let's say candidate A gets 40%, candidate B gets 30%, candidate C gets 20%, everybody else is further down the line. How does that sort it out, so
Mhm.
that, what happens, what's the mechanism that goes on from there?
So what happens is once all of the
Well,
first so
okay.
Go ahead, Nikki.
So
All right,
once
we'll come
all
to you
of
now.
the first choice votes are counted, right? So what you're giving, you're saying 40%, 30%, 20%, and some negligible amounts, right? And just to say, on the Republican side, there are two candidates. So the Republicans will have a primary. Democrats, they're about 12 or 13 actually on the ballot.
Right.
But usually the top 8 are the ones that are in the debates, etc., that qualify. But in any event, so you'll have the first choice votes will be counted, meaning that first choice column, all of those will be tabulated. If
Right.
someone has 40%, 30%, 20%, etc., what will happen is basically the candidate with the least amount of votes will be eliminated. So, for instance, let's say, like you said, candidate C has the least amount of votes. Candidate C will be eliminated. Then all of the votes will be redistributed based on the second choices of everyone who selected candidate C. So, for instance, I could have voted for candidate C as my first choice and then voted for candidate A as my second. My
Right.
vote would go from candidate C to candidate A. You,
Gotcha.
in theory, could have voted for candidate C and then selected candidate D as a second choice. Your vote would go to candidate D, mine would go to candidate A. And I'd like to emphasize the point that it is not a random redistribution. It doesn't automatically go to whoever has the most, etc. It is based on the second choice votes of those who pick that person as their first choice.
Right. Okay. So, in other words, if my first choice person vote gets eliminated,
Mm-hmm.
then my vote will now go to my second. My second choice will then go and it'll allocate to that person, and then it'll redistribute the votes. They're going to look to see then now with the redistribution if somebody has reached the 50% level, and if it hasn't, then we do the same thing again, rinse and repeat for the third choice
So
and
let me
the fourth choice or fifth choice. Is
So
that
let me clarify. Even if so, in New York City, we are always going to go to the top two candidates. The Board of Elections will keep going through the process until they get to the final two.
two?
So
Yeah,
even if in that second round someone
right.
hits the 50% mark, it's going to keep going till we get to the final two. But
Got
of course, that person, would be the winner if they
right,
reach that more than 50% mark. Yes.
right. So when it gets down to the final two, then if the one who's leading them has at that point in time somebody
Right.
will have more than 50% because it's only two people.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I certainly did hear that.
Let me say
Mhm,
something there. Let,
mhm,
let me say something there. Now, if you get to the final two, you have round three, you have round four, and five. So you have to figure out what triggers going to those rounds. Because the vote is distributed, you have to remember that a lot of people those votes will be distributed to candidates that have been eliminated. So when
mhm,
those candidates who have been eliminated get some of those votes, it doesn't bring them back in, but that's where the potential that you could end around, get down to two people, and you will
mhm,
find that they don't have 50% of the vote. That's kind of where everybody, that's a main question that people ask. Look, why do we have rounds three, four, and five? If you get down to two, then there must be somebody has to have 50%. That's not necessarily the case. So that's
Right.
why you then trigger round three. You could trigger round four, round five, because then
wow.
you would start with the lowest candidate again, and you would distribute the third place votes. And then if it's nobody gets to 50%, and you might have that a lot in city council races, because you have to remember that there will be, for the voter, a potential city council candidate to vote for, a borough president to vote for, a controller to vote for, a mayor to vote for. At least four will have more than five candidates. So that means that the voter, for the first time, will have to pick. If they maximize their ballot in every race, they will be picking five people for each race. So then you're asking the voter to pick 20 people, where a lot of times it's very difficult to figure out the one, when you have that many people in the race. So what happens is in educating the African American community and other communities, foreign language communities, etc.,
Mhm,
you
mhm,
have to get past the idea that you can only pick one. Because what that does for the voter that picks only one, that's what we call a premature exhaustion of your ballot. That the
Yes.
voter has not maximized their opportunity to do what they need to do to make this ranked choice work. And particularly, we're worried about that in the African American community. We're worried about that in the Latino community. About that with people who speak something else other than English as their main language in the home. Because if that go past one, we already know nobody is going to get 50% of the vote. Then we do not want to, at the end of the day, look at our communities that had prematurely exhausted their ballot, and it turns out to be mostly our communities, which means other communities that will have filled out one, two, three, four, then the voters will have something to say as the rounds progress and as people are eliminated. So it is very important to understand that you have to fill out everything. If you don't care, that's your choice. If you don't care and you want to vote for one, I have had conversations in California with a Chinese gentleman who actually is from Flushing, Queens, and he says in the Chinese community, you teach them that, you tell them, but when Mandarin or whatever the other languages that they speak in the home, the attitude in person, and you may not be able to overcome that when people make that sort of a choice. That's their right to do. What it means is if they get there, they are not participants that are being counted. So that's important for us to get across to our community all as the rounds progress. So we need to have some names in there, number two, number three, four. And the second myth is don't put the same name five times. because that's not gonna happen.
It's not gonna work.
Right, right, and
But
that's
but
really
that's real. That's real. A lot of people are saying that,
yeah, because they
and
think it's
I'm sure nigga, you heard that. You have to disabuse them of the fact that they no, that's not the way this works.
right. And it's really in explaining that it's the process of elimination. So if you rank the same person 5 times, you're sending your vote to someone who has been eliminated from the race because your vote will not move from your favorite candidate until they are eliminated. So it means if I'm going from your first to your second, that's because your first was eliminated. So you don't want to give your first, second, third, fourth, and fifth to the same person because
Right.
you're sending it to someone who's already out of the race. So yes, it has been. Yeah, there's no super voting or supercharging a vote by giving somebody all 5 of your rankings.
Uh, so I have a quick question. Noticing that the particular New York race, of course, we have the council, we have the comptroller, we have the public advocate and mayor. We don't have the DA. Is that because the state is involved in that particular process?
Yes, the district attorney's race is
Yes.
under the state constitution.
Gotcha, gotcha. Now, in the U.S., are there any state municipalities that also have ranked choice voting?
I think there's about 3 states, and you said Vincent
Oh, I
May.
said
Maine,
Maine
I
is a
believe
state.
Alaska and another. There's one other state
Oh,
I can't remember, but there's
okay.
about 3 states with that.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Gotcha. Well, okay. So let me understand this in terms of let's say the education process. There are webinars now set up that you guys are doing across across the country certainly, but specifically in New York and let's say out in California that are educating folks to this particular process.
Yes. So rankthevotenyc.org. You can visit our website to see upcoming public trainings that we are hosting. Organizations are also hosting trainings as well. I've been, working nonstop every evening, conducting trainings. Tomorrow, the ends up well, it won't be tomorrow. I don't know if you can cut this, but it'll be
We got you.
it's
It
actually
happened.
tomorrow.
It happened already.
Yeah, on Saturday, the NAACP hosted a caravan citywide with their branches, participating to help us get out the word and distribute one pagers. And speaking of multiple languages, on our website, rankthevotenyc.org, we have one pagers. We also have the presentations there in a couple of languages, but we have the one pagers in about 13 languages, the most
Excellent.
spoken in New York City. Yes.
Excellent.
So, let me ask you a question, both of you. So, is there a difference between filling out 3 candidates and filling out 5 candidates? Let's say there's 3 candidates that I really like, and I'm
Hmm.
not really feeling the rest of them.
Right.
Um, will that make a difference in terms of impact, or you know?
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
you will be participating. You're as a voter, you will be participating 3 rounds. More than likely, it's probably not going to go further than that.
Mhm,
At least in the city races, you might be changing yourself in a council race
mhm,
because it might go beyond 3 rounds because of
mhm,
so many people are in it. So
mhm,
Hmm.
that yeah, so that's you go as far as you can reasonably say you can know somebody,
mhm,
or have some idea that the person, somebody second or third. There will be people that just I don't know them, and I'm not going to fill out just go eeny meeny miny mo. So that's something that's important. So yeah, so that's possible, and also because of the 20 people that you've got to come up with, that's going to be very likely. Some voters' ballots will have 5 filled out for a particular office. Some will have 3. Some will have 2. Some will have 1 on the same ballot. You might know everybody in the city council, about the 5. The borough president, okay, you fill out four. The citywide races, you may get to three, but so therefore the ballot will be all over the place, and it has to be. You have to encourage people to do the best they can, and when we get into it, I can talk about some of the. I mean, Nikki's trying to reach the voter. It's a grassroots movement. What we're trying to do is wake up the workforce that kicks into gear to do these and really try to emphasize that this is not business as usual. So that I can relate that experience as well in terms of the vertically integrated when we get it. But there's just a question that you
Right.
just asked.
Right. And I wanted to say too that, the interesting thing is if you are lucky enough that your first choice candidate is the winner, the second and third choices will not be looked at all. So we want to be very clear that, you can still vote. If that one person wins the race, then you're good. But the issue is that if you only pick three and all three are eliminated, then your ballot is exhausted. But if you pick three and one of them is successful and stays in the race, then your vote will stay with them. So it's just hoping that you pick, if you don't pick all five, that one of them, is the winner or comes in second place because your vote will stay with them.
Now, I'd like to ask you guys both from the candidates' standpoint, what are the strategies that the candidates are using or should be using to maximize their impact in ranked choice?
So, I mean, I'll start and
Well,
I'm going
the,
to,
oh,
oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Nick. You
I was
you
just
next,
gonna
Vince.
quickly, I was just gonna quickly say, one of the things that I think would be useful is now, and I tell voters this, that this does give a voter more power than they had usually, because those candidates that have their bases of support, now it's almost like they need to expand that and talk to more people. They should talk to more voters because
Mhm.
let's say we all have our favorite candidate already. You
Mhm.
can come to me and say, you know what, Nikki, I know that Bob is your number one choice. Can you make me your number two? Right? Because we know just in case something happens with Bob,
Yeah.
you know what? That Curtis Archer was a good guy. I liked him. He knocked on my door. You know what? I'm gonna give him my second choice just in case something happens to Bob, who is my favorite. And so now, as a candidate, you now have someone voting for you as a second choice. You can also ask for third choice. Just ranking
I
them
appreciate
there.
you making me your first choice in this scenario.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
When I'm voted in, I'm going to fix the pothole on your street.
Thank you, Bob. First,
there you go.
Vince, go ahead.
yeah.
There you go. Now, the interesting issue with candidates is that ranked choice political advisors will tell you that first of all, most people are trying to get elected hate ranked choice. They still hate it, after 17 years in California. So it was very difficult for me to find people that actually worked in the business of getting people elected in ranked choice. After I waded through, I don't like this, and whatever. So, and ranked choice voting advisors will also tell you that candidates don't like to run for number two. So there's a limited bang for your buck that candidates can get at the candidate level in terms of that sort of vote for me number two, unless they go to play parts of the city or parts of their council district where they know there's some other district leader that's running, and they know that person's going to get number one, and then you just kind of leave it out there to get number two. Now, where the interesting comes in California, in the Bay Area, and in New York, you have what they call independent expenditure groups. You
Mm.
have unions that are independent expenditure groups. You have the business community. You got the real estate community. You got Wall Street. You got the traditional people that always throw money into a candidate and I mean into a campaign season for the reasons of trying to influence their agenda through a particular candidate or candidates. All right. So those independent expenditure groups, the only rule is that you can't coordinate what you do with the campaign itself. So the campaign itself doesn't know what the independent expenditure group is doing, even though it's sort of on their behalf. They've got some idea. So the critical piece is that the independent expenditure group in a better position to aggregate candidates according to their philosophy, according to positions that they may have, or affinity by race. You know, you could say
Mm-hmm.
we have
Mm-hmm.
4 African American mayoral candidates. Vote for all 4 of them, which then elevates the African American community participation, and those who may say that, oh, well, we got too many black candidates. That means that we're going to get watered down. But under ranked choice voting, if you voted for all 4 of them, then you using your vote to say that I want a black candidate. You know, if you're in the African
Mm-hmm.
American community, or you say I want a Latino candidate, or I want a woman, or I want an Asian, or I want I want a, or it's a borough wide piece. So all of those strategies come in place with the independent expenditure committees. Now, what I find with the business community, the big Wall Street types, the deep pockets, etc., they do what their advisories tell them to do, which is typically they write checks for television advertising and radio advertising. And instead of getting out and saying, uh, we we need we need to have candidates that fill our bill and create affinity slots that do one, two, threes, and fours. The same experience with the campaign with the county committees. They are in a position to leverage what their agenda is in a ranked choice voting environment. And as I said, unions and other people are free to do the same thing. But what I'm getting is that just as Nick is trying to deal with the voter understanding it, the apparatus of getting candidates elected and spending your money, if you have money, properly, is something that is kind of lost on people. They don't, they, just like the voter doesn't get it, the people that are in the business of doing campaigns get it. So it's going to be interesting as we look at exhaustedness, as we look at a number of other things and missed opportunities. So you then look at, well, if nobody really has a ranked choice voting strategy, who has the best streams of getting second place votes from either being African American, being a woman, being a progressive candidate, what's going to come from, and what candidates who we think are in front are going to stall when you get to the next rounds, because they've got mostly all of their first place votes. There's no place that any second votes are going to come naturally to them, and it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be interesting to watch as the rounds unfold and candidates drop off, and you see where the votes are assigned.
Gotcha. And so let me understand that this is, of course, the first year. Is ranked choice voting here to stay, or is this just an a test case, and we'll see how we'll tabulate it afterwards and see how we did, and going forward, is it going to be here for all time?
No, we voted it for it.
Right.
So the only way you can remove it is another referendum. Then.
I believe that's the only way. It
Right.
is it was a New York City, it was voted on.
Mm-hmm.
It's scheduled to go into effect. So it is for our local primary and special elections only. and it won't be used in the general election. Just
Ah,
FYI, just for primary and specials for the offices of city council, borough president, mayor, comptroller, and public advocate. So we've
got it.
already actually had 4 elections under the ranked choice voting system because we have 4 specials, 2 in the Bronx and 2 in Queens. The first election that happened in Queens ended up not being ranked choice because one candidate received 60% of the first choice votes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Once all the votes were counted.
So, Night Watchman. So now you do tell in terms of up in there in Westchester County. Anything happening there that we should know about in terms of voting? 'Cause I know there was a
No ranked
mention of
choice.
no ranked choice. No. Okay. Okay.
This is straight
Well,
up.
yeah, for sure. And
Yeah,
now,
nowhere else in the state other than New York City is doing it.
I want to know: is there any discussion about bringing it to the state ranked choice for the primaries?
So not with the organization
Well,
I'm with, but
the advocacy community is good. Go ahead, Nikki.
Go ahead, Nick.
I was going to say
Nikki, go ahead.
there is an entity that's working to have it discussed being something that happens statewide, but it is not the organization that's working with ranked choice, not us.
Gotcha.
And
Gotcha.
we don't really care about the rest of the state.
Well,
We do.
I know.
no, you didn't, Night
I
Watchman.
did
Like the
say
New
that.
Yorker picture. Right?
Yeah.
Remember that song, Kid Creole and the Coconuts? Believe me, I know when you leave New York, you're going nowhere. All right, I didn't mean to slam the rest of the state. But they're fine people there. Yeah. But this is great because at least now we have a more of an understanding of the dynamics of this. And so if you want to vote progressive, you can vote for the progressive candidates. If you want a woman candidate, if you want a black candidate, or you just want a candidate that aligns with your values, you can pick those candidates, and that's how you maximize your vote. And if you just pick one, then you're really you're limiting yourself. So I
Yes.
guess the whole thing is to in our communication is that this is something that actually empowers, because most people don't like change and they don't like things that are more complicated. So I think it's something that we have to make people understand that this is actually putting, more power in your hands, not less, in terms of your choices. Now, my final question to you guys is, I guess the process is something that I imagine could be automated in terms of the tally of the votes. But is it automated, or is it like a hand count and then we do round one and then we manually do round two and manually do round three? How does that work?
So 2 things. So
Oh,
one
okay,
before I
this
oh go ahead, Vincent. Go ahead, Vincent.
I think what he's asking, Nikki, is the potential for the operation.
Right. No,
In
and
December, the New York City Board of Elections put out an RFP for algorithm, computer algorithms that would be able to handle ranked choice voting electronically. They
Okay.
got a response from only one vendor. They got a response from one vendor, and that vendor hadn't done it before, even though the vendor was connected to a 501c3 that does ranked choice voting advocacy, oddly enough, in San Francisco. And so the New York Board of Elections responsibility to approve that software before the for municipalities in the state of New York can go forth with it. So that approval has been withheld. It is my understanding that at the end of this month, the New York State Board of Elections will approve that software. They have been Lebanon is going to be try to put their feet to the fire and ask them what's going to happen with all of that. So the hope is that Once the mail-in votes come in, and let me stop right there and give you a little caveat of what's going to happen. On June 22nd, all your at the ballot votes will be in, whether it's from early voting or same day voting. So you will
Mm-hmm.
get a run of who went to the ballot box to cast their vote in the month of June. So that'll give you your numbers. But remember, we're going to have a large number of mail-in votes, either or military or from other places. So the Board of Elections will wait until the end of the week to get those votes in. Then at the end of the week, the state legislature and the governor passed a law that says in elections, mail-in votes, you have to offer a what we call a cure period. So if there's any mistakes on those mail-in ballots, they will inform the voter, and the voter has a week to correct it. So in reality, you're not going to see any new votes counted July 7th at the earliest. So therefore, it is very important for the Board of Elections when they do their public outreach to let people know what the post election will look like in terms of vigil that will be in place to wait for the votes to come in. Now, if you have nightmare of having to hand count ranked choice voting in any situation citywide, then you can imagine that vote count will stretch further into the summer. So
Wow.
that's the reality. So the term instant runoff we need away from. We need to start off by informing the voter that this is going to take some time, possibly after July 7th. It won't take that much time. You have
Right.
litigation issues, as I said earlier about New York. You have a number of
Mm-hmm.
things, but you prepare folks for the summer replacement of the winter shows. That's going to be watching the vigil of how the votes come in and how they transfer as we move toward 50% of resolving these at least four of the elections, two citywide, the borough-wide ones, and obviously the city council ones. So that gives you an idea of the operational logistics that everybody at City Board of Elections has their fingers crossed, hoping that there are no hiccups, there are no software glitches, there are no challenges that make them have to go in the Yankee Stadium, set up some tables, and have to hand count votes with everybody watching.
Wow,
And
wow.
I mean, and honestly, and everything he said is pretty accurate. And I'm telling people now, we have to get used to election day not being results day. And it's really because of the influx. It's not necessarily ranked choice voting, but we have an influx of absentee ballots that will be coming in due to the pandemic. We've always had to wait because absentee ballots can be postmarked as late as election day. So if someone is mailing something on election day, the Board of Elections has to give them time for that, to arrive. Then there's a possible curing process that could take place. But before I forget, I just wanted to remind anyone who is listening that if they remember the old school board elections in New York City, those used to use ranked choice voting.
Mm.
So just,
Wow.
if people remember that time and would, and use the ranked choice voting during the school board process, it will be similar. But that was accurate. We expected this tabulation software to be approved by the end of next week when the state board meets.
Gotcha. So those machines, Vincent, you said a company out
That's
there
what
in
I've
San
heard as well.
Francisco.
Mhm.
Say that again, Vincent.
Yeah. It's connect. I haven't researched it to that detail, but there's a advocacy organization. Let me try to tell you what's come together in the tech world. What you
Mm-hmm.
call the open software movement. That
Okay.
software should not be proprietary, et cetera, et cetera. So that open software movement is merging with a lot of other quote unquote progressive agendas, including something like ranked choice voting. So you sort of have a commonality of advocacy groups that are coming together along that line. So one ranked choice vote group said, look, you know, if we also believe in open software, I mean, not only software that can be hacked, but open software in terms of proprietary control, then maybe we should be also proactive in creating something that obviously operationalizes what we advocate. So that's where from. That's where their software was developed in the spirit of that, and they're at the table, then the state board is nervous because they say, well, we don't, you haven't done this before, so we've got to be sure that we're not going to have all these glitches and other things that might happen because you're not Dominion or you're not I can't remember the other software provider for elections, but you're not those folks who have some experience with ranked choice voting. So that's kind of where that's at in terms of looking at that company, where they came from, and what was their motivation.
Mm, mm. Could you guys comment on something that's been curious to me in terms of nationwide? We've seen Republican-controlled legislatures really do a concerted effort to suppress the vote. Could you comment on that and how that may be? Because you guys are educating folks about a reality here, let's say in New York and elsewhere. But in terms of voter suppression, is there any mechanism to really confront that, Nikki?
Well,
Okay. Well,
let's look at that how it plays out in New York.
Okay.
We don't have a real voter suppression issue. What we have is
Right.
in terms of voter turnout, the state, in various parts of the state of New York and various elections in New York, we're
Mm-hmm.
48th out of the 50 states in terms of turnout. So
Mm.
nobody's trying
Mm-hmm.
to suppress us. But
Mm-hmm.
what the advocates for ranked choice voting are saying is that we need something to stimulate voter participation in this the state of New York and move around the way political committees have done. Because one of the things that has happened is those who are in office and want to stay in office necessarily running around registering voters.
Mm.
So it's kind of, you get people who know, you get the people who know them, you get those folks to come out, and you get yourself reelected. I mean, I will just say it. One of the things that I know Elliot Spitzer used to say to both African American groups and to Latino groups is that in statewide races, when you have an assembly or a senate district that has in white neighborhoods you have turnout, and then in neighborhoods you have, now that gets the people elected in that African American legislators, the African American council members, but it is not an influencer when you get to citywide and certainly statewide races and obviously federal races, if that's the
Mm-hmm.
level of turnout that we have
Right.
in our communities, because everybody's hustling to try to people out.
right.
Yep.
And I mean, you know, what he said is 1,000% true. Our voter turnout, and I'm so glad you all are doing this radio show to bring attention to the fact that we do have this primary in just a few short weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Early voting is going to start on June 12th. So we really are right there. Absentee ballots are being sent out, so people are beginning to vote already. And our turnout, in 2013, I believe it was, very small percentage, under 20% for our local
Mm.
citywide races.
Wow.
In 20, We had one time of 14% in recent history for our local elections, the highest being like 24%. So we might have, there's Democratic primaries, Republican primaries. Democrats, we have about 14.7 million Democrats, and basically roughly a million or less are determining who's running our city.
Wow. Incredible. Mm,
But I think, Bob, and I just want to add to something that you touched on, and I want to expound upon it, and it's the fact that, in talking about the difficulties in getting our folks to rank more than one person or vote for more than one person, is to move to where do people stand on the policy issues and values. So it's finding, I feel like if we look at a favorite, right, we can maybe get to one or two with like a favorite type of person, or using that language. But when we look at the policies and where people stand on the issues, I think, and values that are important to us, I think those are the kinds of thoughts that enable us to rank and expand our universe of who we can vote for in a particular election. And so I just want to re-emphasize that point of, finding out where candidates stand on the issues that are important to you. And then you can say, okay, maybe three or four of them stand, have the same position or the same values that you do. And so then you can say, okay, then I can rank, three or four of these people who have the same position I do on these particular issues.
Mhm.
exactly.
Wow, so this has really been very informative. So we understand that we have an opportunity, we have a new tool to have more influence and power in our vote, but we have to take the responsibility to actually learn which candidates actually espouse our values, and we have to get our butts out there in June and vote like it was November, vote like our lives depended on it, because the truth is that we're going to have almost an entire new city government next year, and it's just a question of whether we're going to have the one that we want or whether we're going to have the one that other people wanted because they voted and we didn't.
And
Exactly.
now add to that, the last day to register to vote is May 28th, and you must be a registered member of the political party to participate in the primary. So if you
Gotcha.
want to participate in the Democratic primary, you must be registered to vote as a Democrat. If you want to participate in the Republican primary, you must be registered as a Republican, and so on. And that deadline again is May 28th. I just want to give out two websites. One is electnyc.org, electnyc.org. This website is a partnership with Citizens Union, I believe Gotham Gazette. They came together, and basically they have listed, if you type in your address, you can find all the candidates running in your district, and they have information. So if the candidate submitted information, they have that posted. If nothing else, what I've noticed, the bare minimum, they at least have all of their websites and social media hashtags, social media handles, so that you can find out information on each of the candidates running in your district. So that's a handy tool. And then voting.nyc, that's the website, the official website for NYC Votes. And they also publish a voter guide that contains information, and they have an electronic version on their website. So you can look through that as well to learn more about the candidates.
Okay. So definitely, I'm seeing that with this. This is certainly going to be taking a little bit more time in terms of when you get in there, when you arrive that day. It's going to definitely take a little bit more time and thought to get through the process.
Well, I just will add this too. Another tool people can use, if they go to, it's on the Board of Elections website, vote.nyc, or they can simply Google, it's Find My Poll site. There's a website where you can actually view your sample ballot. So before you go to vote, you can type in your address, and it'll tell you your polling location, your early voting site, and then there's an option to view your sample ballot, and it will give you a list of all the people running.
Oh,
So
that's
you'll
excellent.
know in advance, so it won't take you as long to, to actually execute the process of voting.
That's beautiful. Beautiful. So, Night Watchman, how we doing, buddy?
Well, I think it's time for us to wrap it up. I think we've covered this thing pretty well. I really appreciate Nikki and Vincent for your perspective and your experience in these things. And we are hoping that people will take this information, share it, or go to the webinars that either of these people are presenting. But get people involved. I think the most important thing that we all can do is just bang the drum and get people in our own circles to focus on the fact that this primary is coming up. And a lot of times we're just not geared for primary elections. It's like it was like Allen Iverson when he was talking about practice. It's like, why
Practice.
do we have to do that? But this primary is like the game. This
Totally is. Totally
yeah.
is. Well, you know what? Another thing, Vincent, we're going to have you come back on the show because we need to actually speak to you about the importance of public radio, especially in this climate. So I want you to commit to coming back to Soul Lounge Primetime to specifically talk about that.
Oh, absolutely. I'd be happy to.
Beautiful, beautiful.
And Vincent, I just gotta ask you to say Harlem has its own radio station.
Harlem has its own radio station.
It's WACR 90.3 FM. We're so glad that was the voice that started this radio station's
The journey.
broadcast
That's
in
right.
July of 1986. We are so glad to have you on. We got a real kick once we saw the New York Times article you sent us, and so we're kind of like fanboys, So forgive us, but it's great to have you on the show and give us a perspective. We've been on WHCR, I guess, well over 10 years now, and it's exciting for us to connect with the history, and it's really this radio station has played an important role of free speech and free expression in our community. And we're glad that we're still here doing it. And we're glad to kind of connect to where it started from. And so we definitely want to have you back on and talk about it. And we might whisper in the ear of our general manager, Angela Harden, and see if we can throw some sort of 35th birthday party for WHCR this summer. So,
Absolutely. That
yeah.
would be
Sounds like a
very
plan.
good.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And Nikki, I won't trouble you till after the primary, but we definitely we need to get together and raise a couple of glasses, and also who knows, we may even see Sunday sermon return to the park. Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right. Yes.
yes.
Yes. So yes, we will definitely do that. So Night Watchman, take us home.
This has been Soul Lounge Prime Time on WHCR 90.3 FM and also on our Soul Lounge Prime Time YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us. Check us out. We're always here 7 p.m. on Mondays on WHCR. 8 o'clock, we're streaming live on YouTube. And thanks for joining us and come back next week.
Thank you, y'all.